All right, so let's talk about how to understand the whole tense system in English. The best way to understand this is to understand that there are just two simple tenses. And this is simple present. These are simple present and simple past. And what we can do is we can add complex tenses and tense meanings with those tenses to these simple tenses. The important idea here is to add these. So we are always going to be in either the simple present or the simple past. And what we're going to be able to do is add some more complex meanings to those simple time and verb meanings. So what are the meanings that we can add? We can add future meaning, and also future and modal meaning are kind of an overlap. They're kind of the same thing. So that's one of the meanings that we can add. Another meaning that we can add is perfect meaning. Another is continuous, and the last is passive. Now, some people will say the passive is not really a tense because it's not about, there's no time-related meaning, and that's true, but it's not really an important difference. It's similar to the rest of these in that you have a complex verb construction. You change the verb construction, you add a verb and change word ending, and you do add some kind of meaning. It isn't a time meaning, but there is a meaning. So we might as well group it with the other ones. So what's a good way to think about this? You can think about this like you have two different types of pizza. You can think of it as like maybe you have an American style crust. That's American. And then you have like an Italian. American crusts are thick and Italian crusts are thin. So you've got two different pizza breads, and you can add any one of these toppings to your pizza. And when you add these toppings, you're going to add them to all of the meanings that your verb combination already has. So if you have the present simple only and you add the continuous, then all you will have is the present continuous meaning. If it's in the past and you add the continuous, it will be past continuous meaning. All right, but we can make it more complex than that. Let's say we have present continuous and we also add the perfect to that. Now we'll have both the perfect and the continuous meaning. And that's just the same as if you have a simple cheese pizza. Let's actually we can call these American and Italian, not just the bread but also the tomato and the cheese. So you have just basically a simple cheese pizzas in these cases, and you're adding these extra toppings. So if you add the perfect and the continuous, it's exactly the same as if you add sausage and pepperoni. And the important idea here is that the sausage stays a sausage. It doesn't change so much. All right, the pepperoni stays a pepperoni, and the cheese pizza stays a cheese pizza. But you have all these separate things together at the same time. You have all of these separate meanings together at the same time in a verb construction. So let's just do a quick overview of what these mean. If you want more details, you can look at my videos about these. So future, this is pretty clear. It's future time. Modals are just the modal meanings, which are usually the probability of something happening for some reason. Can be an obligation, probability, ability. There might be some others, but in general, we're just saying that the possibility of something happening. All right, and will is just a modal verb, actually. Will. Going to can be thought of as a semi-modal verb. But anyway, in the future, it's simple to understand, I think. Okay, perfect. It's a little bit harder to understand. You should probably watch my video about that to really understand it. But briefly, it just means that at the whatever moment we're talking about, it can be present, it can be past, it can be a future moment. But whatever moment it is, we're saying that there is a result at that moment. For the present simple, it still needs to be a developing result. And in all cases, it has to be a result that is important at that moment. So for that moment, whatever moment that is, for present perfect, should be developing result. Again, watch the video if that isn't totally clear to you. That's not the point of what we're doing now. So continuous means the activity of the verb is temporary. And the passive just means that the object is placed before the verb. Instead of saying the ball was, or instead of saying he kicked the ball, we say the ball was kicked. Okay, so let's look next at the mechanics of how this happens. To help you understand, we're going to kind of derive complex verb constructions, and in this way you can maybe have a wider perspective, a bigger picture view of how it works, and you'll be able to construct them, any of them yourself, and understand how it all fits together and what it all means. So all right, so what we do is when we add these together, is that we kind of put them on top of each other. Each of these, think about the constructions for a second. What is the construction for the future? It's will or going to plus ing form of the verb. We're ignoring the present continuous form of the future. That won't work for this system that we're about to do. These are the ones that are relevant here. Perfect, of course, is have plus third form of the verb. Continuous is to be plus ing form of the verb. And passive is going to be to be plus third form of the verb. Okay, so if we want to put a lot of these together, I mean, if we have two words for each tense that we're adding to a verb combination, we're gonna end up with too many words. So how do we solve this problem? We solve this problem, like I said, by putting the constructions on top of each other. So let's see how we do that. Let's start with just the future sentence. He will go to the store tomorrow. Okay. Let's add, so, well, okay, so what is our verb construction here? Will go, right? And we can think about it this way. We have the simple time, which is present. We have the future added to the simple present. Okay, this may be confusing, but if you think about it, we can also have the future in the past. So this future is just actually a layer. All right, so if you say he was going to go, let's change this. So if you change this to he was going to go, then we have exactly the same thing, except it's the next day. We're talking about the situation the previous day. So he was going to go to the store today. So you see, we can have the future in either the present time or the past time. So it may seem strange, but if you think about it, that's what's really happening here. So the future is actually just a layer on top of one of our simple times. Here's our American pizza, simple present, with the future layered on. And here's our simple past with that layered on too. All right, so if we come back to the mechanics, of this, we've got the simple time, which is the present, and we have the future. And what we're going to do, since we're overlapping these, well, wait a second, we'll do that in a second. This is what we're starting with, and this is just all that we have so far. So far we're not overlapping anything except just the present and the future. Going to plus, and this is going to be the infinitive without to. All right, and then if we add these together, we got our total verb construction, which is going to plus, we can add another layer here. Okay, so we just have these simple overlaps here. Oops, no two here. Infinitive without two of to go, right? Going to go, and that's what we would have. All right, so let's say we want to make this a little bit more complex. Okay, so let's pick another sentence and add another layer of complexity to it. Let's add the continuous to it. He is going to be walking to the store at this time tomorrow. So what do we have in our verb construction here? He's going to be walking to start this time tomorrow. So this is the verb construction. So let's see how we do that with a more complex construction. So everything is going to be the same here, except that we have another layer added, which is the continuous layer. And here you can see how we overlap these. So I'm not going to put the continuous construction right under the future construction. I'm going to move it over one. I mean, it's just nonsense. You can't do that. You can only, what they're going to do is they're going to share the middle verb, which between them, and this can happen multiple times in a verb construction. But the to be is the first part of the continuous, and we're going to add second ing is the second part, and we're going to add both of them to everything we have here. So if you go down here, present plus going to, we're going down here. I didn't mention that, but we're going to kind of not add them, but you're going to kind of take this form of the verb below it. So all right, so if you take going to, present of going to, if you take the infinitive without to of go, you just have go. No, this is different. Infinitive without to of be is what we need here, right? Okay, so this is how we get the be in there. And then we need to take the ing form of go, go, and that's going to be going. And that's how we get this, got a new verb, which is walk. And that's how we get this going to be walking to the store. Walking. All right, going to be walking to the store at this time tomorrow. That's essentially how it works, and this will work for anything. Let's look at what I showed you about how the two constructions will share a verb. So if we have the going to plus infinitive without to as a future construction, and we have the to be plus ing as the continuous construction, then the word that they're sharing here is to be. So this to be right here is the second part of the future construction, and is also the first part of this continuous construction. So this is what I mean when I say we overlap the complex tense constructions on each other. All right, we can just do one more example where we look at a very complex case. So let's look at a sentence where we combine basically all of these right here. So we could say, that building will have been being constructed for 9 months next week. Okay, so we're going to see that we have future construction here. Will plus infinitive without to. We've got the perfect construction, which is going to be have plus third form of the verb there. We have the continuous construction, which is the is be plus ing form of the verb, and then we have the passive construction, which is be plus the third form of the verb. And we've been talking about the mechanics, but another thing that you want to think about is how the meanings are being put in there at the same time that these structures are being used. So if we do that, if we go back to these ones, so this one's just our simple meaning, but here in this case we had both the future meaning and the continuous meaning. So to really understand this, you need to understand how the future continuous works, and you can see what I have in my resources about that to understand that better. But essentially we have a moment in time, which is at this time tomorrow, and we have a temporary activity at that future moment. So we have both meanings in here. We have the meaning that this is something in the future, and we have the meaning that there's a temporary activity at a moment in the future. Okay, if we go back to this example, then we have a lot of meanings in here. We have future meaning, we've got perfect meaning. Why do we have perfect meaning? We have perfect meaning because we have a result here. that is important at that defined moment. The defined moment in this case is next week. Do that. Here's our verb construction, including the word constructed. All right, so we have a result. That's why we need to use the perfect here. We have the continuous. Now this is a more complex situation. When you add the continuous to the perfect, it adds a kind of new dimension to the perfect. The reason is because if you have the perfect alone, the activity of the verb already will be temporary. So both things make the verb temporary. The perfect, or the continuous, makes it temporary just by itself without any additional meaning. The perfect has this additional meaning, which is the result, but it will always also be temporary. So the continuous here isn't making it temporary. It already is if we have the perfect alone, but it does add another dimension, which I talk about in a different video about the present continuous. And some other things that I have on my website. So anyway, this is another meaning being added, and then we have the passive meaning, which tells us that this building here is actually the object of the verb rather than the subject of the verb. So let's see how this all would be constructed. So this time we used will instead of going to. And this time we had the perfect next. Oh, by the way that these verbs will be added will always be the same. This might be an interesting point. Okay, the order here. Because of course we don't always have all of them. But however many we do have, the order that those added have to be the same. And a good way to think about this is like you have a recipe. Now with a pizza, you don't necessarily need to do this, but for example, with like an Asian stir fry. With an Asian stir fry, first you should put one thing. Maybe you cook the meat first. You put the meat in first, and then or maybe it's the vegetables. But anyway, you need to put one thing. You start the pan. You put the oil in, and then you need to put different things in at different times. And the same way here, we need to add different constructions with different meanings to our total verb construction in a certain order. So that order is the order, just exactly the order that I gave you. So it's future, then perfect, then continuous, then passive. And so, for example, if you want to put just the future and the continuous as we did before, then it has to be future first and then continuous next. If you have just the perfect and the passive, okay, which one comes first in this sequence? Well, the perfect does, so that one should go first, and then afterwards the passive construction should be added. All right, so we're going to do the same here. So since perfect is next in line, we're going to do that next, and that's going to be to have plus third form of the verb, and then next we're going to add the continuous. Then we're going to add, still need to add the passive here. All right. So, and then our verb is going to be construct, to construct. It's hard to fit all this in here. All right, so hopefully you can see how these line up. So will is just going to be by itself. We're going to take the to infinitive of, or the infinitive without to, I mean, of to have. So of course it's just have. Then we're going to take the third form of to be, which is been, right? And then we're going to take the ing form of to be, being, and then the third form of the verb in our verb, which is constructed. And that's why that is what we said. Will have been being constructed, will have been being constructed. We put a future meaning in here, we put a perfect meaning in here, we put a continuous meaning in here, we put a passive meaning in here. We layered them on top of each other by having them share the middle verb. I'll point this out again. So the future construction, will plus have, and perfect construction, have plus been, share this middle verb here, have. This is the second part of the future and the first part of the perfect. The perfect here, have been, and the continuous share this middle between them, been. So this is the second part, third form of the perfect, and is the first part, to be, of the continuous. This being is going to be shared by the continuous construction, which is be plus ing form of the verb, and the passive construction, which is be plus third form of the verb. And by doing that, by constructing in this way, layering them on top of each other, we include the meanings of all of these things. We talked about this a couple of minutes ago, but just to review, we have the future meaning. We have the perfect meaning that comes from there being a result, which is the count of time up until that moment. We have the continuous meaning added to the perfect meaning, which tells us, just briefly, it tells us that the activity of the verb has not stopped from the time that it started. And that's it, basically. It hasn't stopped from the time that it started. There was no stop, and it continued all the way until that moment. And then the passive meaning, which is simply that the building is the object of the verb rather than the subject of the verb, which it would normally be if it were if it came before the verb. So that's it. Thank you for your attention.